there seems to be, in my personal opinion, from my point of view, a very conscious effort to make young men feel like it's okay to be weak. And this new Superman movie that just came out is a perfect example of that. First of all, let me start this video by saying, I am the biggest Superman fan there is. One of the biggest you'll ever meet in your life. I'm a big fan of Superman for a few reasons, right? The first and probably most important one is because Superman has a lot of similarities to my favorite person of all time, who is Jesus Christ, the person of Jesus Christ. Their stories are the same. And if it's not clear yet that that's the case, that is a purposeful thing that was done by the creators of the character Superman. Superman was actually created by two Jewish guys, right? So it's very clear that they drew inspiration from the story of Jesus to create the story of Superman. Not like an inverted or opposite story, no, but like a fictional character with the same elements of a Christ-like being, right? Okay. What does that mean for me and for you? It's very simple. It means if Superman is a Jesus-like figure, that means he embodies what it means to be Christ-like, and as a result has a few characteristics about him, a lot of characteristics about him, that are very similar to that of Jesus Christ. Jesus Christ claimed to be God in human form. That is essentially what Superman is, right? Jesus Christ started his ministry at the age of 30 and ended his ministry at the age of 33. Superman started his at the age of 33. I mean, that being comic book accurate. I know in the new one, he apparently started his ministry, when I say his ministry, I mean donned the cape of Superman at the age of 27. And now in this movie, it starts 3 years later. Spoilers alert, by the way, if you haven't seen it. But who cares? We'll get into that. We'll brush past that for now. The point is, Superman is meant to be like the fictional version of Jesus Christ, right? Okay. I know there's some people that believe like Jesus Christ himself was fictional. I'm not going to get into that in this video. You believe what you believe, whatever. That's one. The second thing I love about Superman, and this is a bit very selfish of me, but it's also why I can claim to know a lot about Superman in a deep way, is the fact that Superman is an immigrant. Yes, I said it like that. I'm a Nigerian immigrant in America. Superman is an immigrant. He is a Kryptonian immigrant on Earth. That is what his character is all about. And that's a very important piece of information because it literally is tied into why his character is the way it is. You see, if you watch the show, Smallville, there's an entire show on CW called Smallville. That entire show is centered around Superman, Clark Kent, right? That's his earthly name. Clark Kent grew up in apparently a fictional town called Smallville in Kansas. When he crash landed and they adopted him, they decided to raise him like their own, like their son. They're essentially his parents, like for better or for worse, he is a Kent, right? But here's the thing. He's an alien baby with powers, and that's what the entire show Smallville was all about, is showing you how he grew up in that situation, what it was like for him, how he moved and maneuvered and all that stuff. Great show. If you haven't seen it, please go watch it. Here's the thing about that situation with him being an immigrant baby, an alien immigrant baby. Superman had to grow up his entire life with an identity crisis. I'm saying that again. Superman had to grow up his entire life being raised by the Kents in Smallville with a crisis of identity, because this is an alien baby who can do superhuman shit. Not even superhuman, super alien being shit. And now being raised by two humans on Earth. All right? That is called a clash of identities, because guess what? Despite being raised by humans and having the quote-unquote human experience, he's not human. Clark Kent is not human. And that is the essence of Superman. Superman is living in a world that wasn't designed for him, with people that don't understand his experience or point of view. He is not human. He is an alien god being, right? What else can you call it? The guy can fly into space and breathe normal. He can have bullets shot at him and they ricochet off his chest like it's nothing, even off his eyeball in one of the movies, the one with Brandon Routh, right? He can blow things over to freezing temperatures with his breath. He can look at things and catch them on fire. Like, he is not a regular person. He is a godlike being. And as a kid growing up in Smallville, I had a lot of issues learning how to balance that, master that, not just learning how to control his powers as they began to manifest during his puberty, but also how to relate to the human experience. You gotta understand, this kid has always been strong since day one. He was helping his dad lift up tractors when he was 5 years old to help him fix it, right? So he didn't even understand the concept of lifting something that was too heavy. He didn't experience it too heavy till I believe he was about 15, 16 years old. And that was when he had to lift an entire train, right? Really stop it, but that's an entirely different story. You get the point. The point is, he didn't even know what it was like to be human despite being surrounded by humans all the time. So he had to learn to pretend to be human so that the other people wouldn't catch on. His entire life was hiding his alien side to become more human, to cosplay humanity. And so he never saw his Kryptonian powers as a blessing. He never once did. It wasn't like he was excited to be Kryptonian and happy and like, oh my God, this is awesome, I have all these powers. For the most part, no. Like, yeah, there were times where he was having a lot of fun with it. But for the most part, the powers were always a burden to him. They always were. Because all he wanted to do was be Martha and Jonathan Kent's son. A human, regular son. He didn't want to be this godlike alien being. He didn't want to be the potential answer to the cry of millions around the world. He didn't want to be the special chosen one that would lead humanity into the future. He just wanted to have a regular, normal childhood and high school experience the same way all his other mates going to school with him had. And so that created a massive mental block in his head because he wasn't willing or ready to accept the fact that he was Kryptonian and he had all these powers, and as a result, all the responsibilities that would come with it. His powers began to misfire or become severely hindered or not even manifest at all because he was mentally rejecting being Kryptonian. And so the story of Superman is watching him slowly over time, from the point where he's a teenager, having fully cemented those mental blocks, all the way into his adulthood, past his 20s into his 30s, become the man that not only fully accepts the fact that he is a Kryptonian godlike being with the human experience, but also is willing to use those powers of him to create good in the world, but also is willing to accept the responsibility that comes with having all those magnificent powers. That is when he truly becomes Superman. That is when his mental blocks are lifted. That is when he truly embodies what it means to be Superman, the man of steel, right? The guy who can do whatever it takes to save as many people as possible, really save everyone because he has that kind of power. And he fully sits into that new identity of being humanity's savior. Not that he completely rejects his humanity or his human experiences. In fact, he ends up using the fact that he's very consciously aware of the human experience that he's tried to cosplay all those years to be able to save humanity. He uses that for all his rescues, right? He understands what it is to be human on a deep level because he's experienced it. He's had to cosplay it all his life. So it becomes useful to him. However, he only really truly becomes Superman and dons the cape when he accepts the fact that he is not human. He is something more. He's something more special than that. He is greater than that. And because he is this godlike being, this alien being, he now has the responsibility with his magnificent powers to help humanity, to save humanity. That is the point of the Superman story. It's not the story of a human trying to become God or a God trying to become human. No. It's a story of a God having the human experience and then eventually coming to terms with the fact that they are indeed a God. It's a story of a God that didn't know they were a God, being reminded of the fact that they're a God, and then eventually accepting the fact that they are a God. And how they accepted to the point where they realize that them accepting that they're a God is the reason they have the ability to help humanity. Not because it makes them better than humanity, not because it makes humanity less than them, but because understanding and accepting that Kryptonian heritage and side is what makes him fit to be the person that humanity can trust to save the day every single day. You see, if you want to get into Superman lore, the comic books and whatnot, it gets crazy in there. The writers, the Superman writers are some of the most reckless fictional writers I've ever come across in my life. Superman gets to the point, get this, right, where he is so in tune with his Kryptonian biology, he understands it so well, and he tests it to the limits so much that he eventually finds out he really doesn't have a limit. He finds out that, oh, by the way, I'm Kryptonian, not human, so I really don't have a need to breathe oxygen or eat food. He goes weeks at a time in space without breathing any oxygen because, again, it turns out his Kryptonian biology doesn't require oxygen. He thought he needed oxygen because, again, he had the human experience. He grew up thinking he was human. But finding out that he's actually Kryptonian and accepting the fact that he's Kryptonian, he begins to test and realize, oh, I don't really need oxygen. Food, don't really need that either. I can go months, years without consuming physical food. Because it turns out the only source of energy he needs is the sun. He's really like he's really a plant man, if you think about it, right? And I explain all that to say this. Superman's story is one of the most important stories ever told because it is a story of mankind. Superman's story, Jesus' story, whoever you want to pick, same story, same lesson to learn. You are a God in a world that wasn't designed specifically for you. But if you can remember that you are a God, then you can also accept the fact that you being a God is a good thing. It is not something to feel guilty about. It's not something to reject. It is something to come to terms with because the world is better when you have your powers, when you don your cape. Now, let's compare that and that philosophy and that way of thinking to the new Superman movie with David Corenswet and James Gunn. And you realize very quickly that this new Superman movie is designed to take away the major lesson of Superman. This Superman is weak. This Superman is pathetic. This Superman lacks any real discipline or emotional self-control or maturity. The very first scene in this movie, spoiler alert again if you haven't seen it, is Superman being beaten to a pulp and sent to the fucking North Pole in a bloody mess, lying down in the fetal position, and so beaten down that he has to be saved by his cousin's dog. Don't even get me started on how many emotional outbursts and unnecessary temper tantrums he has throughout this movie, like a fucking child. On top of that, the cherry on top of all this, the worst thing ever, is the lesson he learns in the end of this movie. When he finally gets, first of all the help in the world to help him solve all these different conflicts going on at the same time and corner his arch nemesis in the movie, Lex Luthor. His heroic speech in the end is about how he's just as human as everybody else. And how what makes him human is the fact that he's just as weak and makes just as many mistakes as every other human being out there. And as a human being myself, not only do I find that insulting, I find that condescending. Because what do you mean that what makes us human is our weakness? That is not the right message to learn. That is not the right thing to say. Because as human beings, what makes us human isn't our weakness. If anything, it's the fact that we persevere and overcome despite our weaknesses. We're the most impressive species on this planet because despite our obvious limitations, we've been able to conquer and take over this planet. That is what makes us humans, is that we have used the things that we have, the very few resources that we've had. By few, I mean our vast intellect, obviously, right? We have used our vast intellect to create such massive abundance for ourselves on a planet that was made and designed to weed us out of existence. That is what it means to be human. So for the symbol of hope in fictional form to come out and tell young men specifically that what makes them a good person is to be weak and lowly, I take personal offense to that. I think that's fucking bullshit. That is not the right message to send. Not just because it's incorrect to the fucking source material, but because there is no strength in weakness. There is no good in weakness either. What makes you a good person is having power and knowing how to use it correctly, not allowing it to abuse you or anyone else, or allowing yourself to be so out of control that you allow the power you have and you wield to become a burden to other people. That is what makes you good. Not stripping yourself of the power completely. To strip yourself of power completely, whether physically, mentally, financially, or any other way, is true pathetic weakness. The idea isn't to be scared of power or be scared of wielding it. The idea is to become a master and disciplined around power. That is the point. That is what the real Superman teaches you. To come to terms with the fact that you are greater than you realize you are. And to begin now, this day, to mingle and practice and learn to relate yourself correctly to the power, the inherent power you have. The kingdom of God is within you. Jesus Christ said that. Right? That is the point. Not to associate yourself or become more relatable to weakness. I think of that as demonic. To lower yourself like that, all it does is make the weaklings feel comfortable around you. And who wants friends like that? That is wrong. I reject that completely. And I'm making this video today not because I need you to think the same way as me, or I need you to see the world the same way I do, but I want you to actually test these ideas out. I want you to really do both. I want you to watch the new Superman movie with David Corenswet, and then go back and watch the Henry Cavill Superman. Zack Snyder does such a fantastic job of portraying Superman in the Snyder movies, the Man of Steel, the Dawn of Justice one. Superman is exactly how he's supposed to be in those movies. Strong, powerful, decisive, even to the point of making sacrifices that go directly against his previously held beliefs and notions. Superman wasn't supposed to want to kill anyone, but he was able and willing to make that sacrifice when it came down to it. When he saw that he had to choose between preserving Krypton, which is what Zod represented in that movie, or destroying humanity. Guess what he chose? He chose humanity. And guess how he did it? He used his power to do it. He didn't give up his power. He didn't become weak like the humans, right? He made the right choice and he saved humanity. He used his power to do that. Zack Snyder really understands what Superman is. And I highly, highly, highly recommend go and cleanse your mind with the new Superman movie and watch the old Man of Steel movie with Zack Snyder. It'll give you a perfect example of what Superman really is, what his character should be about, and how he viewed his power at first versus how he became Superman. All right? Now, if you're wondering why I'm talking so passionately about Superman, I think I already explained that in the beginning. I'm a huge fan of his. But more importantly, that story of Superman, that story of Jesus Christ, that is what led me to understanding what true self-belief is. Because in a way, that is what those two characters teach. True self-belief. And that's why the very first lesson that I talk about in my course, Self-Belief 2.0, literally is about that, the Superman mindset. Understanding that you're not a human trying to become a god, or a god trying to become human. You're a god having the human experience, but retaining and remembering the fact that you are indeed a god. Becoming more comfortable with that. That is the essence of self-belief. You truly have self-belief when you know for a fact that you are a god and you're okay with it. Now, if you want to go watch the entirety of Self-Belief 2.0, you can go to the link in my description below and click on it and get Self-Belief as soon as possible. I have put a 7-day free trial on my private community. That way, when you join my private community, you can have instant access to Self-Belief 2.0. And trust me, 7 days is more than enough time to go through the whole thing. Maybe not more than once, maybe 1.5 times, but definitely you can go through the whole thing and truly, deeply understand it at your own pace, of course. Go down there, click on the link, go and watch through Self-Belief 2.0 and get you some fucking real Superman mindset in you, okay? In the meantime, all right, while you're still deciding if you want to do that or not, go ahead and watch this video right here. I've handpicked this particular video for a specific reason, so go through this video and please watch it more than once. Repetition is the law of deep and lasting impression. Watch it more than once, okay? It's me, Jake's favorite scientist. With all this information, what you must.